All right, welcome back to another Live Wire. I am Jared Moore, and Live Wire is the program where we take your questions from the chat. On today's program, we're going to have Mr. Mike Parks. He was the legal representation for Mvskoke Creek Nation citizen Alicia Stroble, who recently got a very favorable decision from an administrative law judge in her case to try to get back her income taxes from the state of Oklahoma. So I wanted to say, first off, Mr. Parks, thank you so much for joining me.
It is a pleasure to be with you today.
Could you kind of catch us up from how you got involved in this case to where it stands right now with Ms. Stroble's claim?
Yes. Last year, I was contacted by Alicia Stroble. I've been her attorney on other matters. And she asked me to represent her on her tax protest. She had filed returns with the Oklahoma Tax Commission claiming the Indian income tax exclusion. And for 3 years, 2017, 2018, and 2019. And the Oklahoma Tax Commission mailed her a letter called an adjustment letter where they denied her claim for the Indian income tax exclusion and informed her that she had 60 days to file a written protest. So at that time, I assisted Ms. Stroble in drafting a letter that was the tax protest. And in that letter, we requested an administrative law hearing, and we submitted that letter to the Oklahoma Tax Commission. And thereafter, her case was assigned to an administrative law judge. It was assigned for a hearing in Oklahoma City back in January of this year, I believe, 2022. And then it was on April the 12th, I believe, I received the findings, conclusions, and recommendation of the administrative law judge, where he found that two of the three requirements for the Indian income tax exclusion had been agreed to by the Oklahoma Tax Commission, those being that Ms. Stroble was a citizen of the Mvskoke Creek Nation and that her income was derived from the Mvskoke Creek Nation where she is employed. And the only issue that the judge had to determine was whether or not she met the residency requirement. The Tax Commission has always taken the position that a member of an Indian tribe has to live on trust or restricted property, or else they don't get the exclusion. We challenged that, and the judge ruled in our favor. The judge ruled that because Ms. Stroble lived in Okmulgee, within Okmulgee County, within the 11-county jurisdiction of the Mvskoke Creek Nation, that she lived within the Indian country of her tribe. And so he recommended to the commissioners that they allow her Indian income tax exclusion. Thereafter, on April 27th, the Oklahoma Tax Commission filed a written application for a hearing before the three commissioners. And then I filed a reply brief to their application just a few days ago. So we're now waiting to see if the commissioners are going to grant the hearing or not. And regardless, the commissioners will have to make a final order. They can either accept or reject the recommendations of the administrative law judge. And once they make a final order, then whoever loses can appeal that to the Oklahoma Supreme Court. So that is kind of the history and the current status.
Okay. Sir, could I get you to move your camera over a little bit just to get you in the center of the frame a little bit? And while you're doing that, I'm going to catch the audience up with a little bit more information, too, that's happened since that ruling came down. Thank you so much for that. And I want to also mention to the audience, if you guys have any questions, pop them in the chat. We'll see if we can answer them. Mr. Parks can't give out legal advice, but he can kind of probably delineate some of the process here. What I wanted to mention to the audience is after on April 30th quarterly session for the Mvskoke Creek Nation National Council, they passed NCA 22-052, which was a law of the Mvskoke Creek Nation authorizing a lawsuit to be filed in federal court in the name of the Mvskoke Creek Nation seeking relief on behalf of the nation and Mvskoke citizens against unlawful taxation within the boundaries of the Mvskoke Creek Nation Reservation. That bill passed the council and has gone on to chief and has been signed, and we got just today a statement from the executive branch on that law that says, quote, the Mvskoke Creek Nation has authorized its Attorney General to file a lawsuit in federal court to address the Oklahoma Tax Commission's refusal to follow a decades-old law that provides for MCN citizens who live and earn income from sources within the reservation to claim an income tax exemption. It shouldn't require a federal court case for the state to respect the law, but the nation is committed to defending the rights of its citizens by ensuring the state complies with the law, end quote. That bill there's a link to that in the description of this video if you want to go and check out that bill. My question for you, Mr. Parks, on that is, were you aware of that legislation and were you involved in it in any way?
Is my camera better now?
Yeah, well, you're still a little bit over on the side, but it's no big deal. That's better. Thank you, sir. So were you familiar with this legislation I just mentioned?
Yes, I was informed about it. I was not involved in drafting it or passing it, but I certainly wish the chief, the National Council, the law firm they retain, the Attorney General's office, and the entire Mvskoke Creek Nation the best, and I sure hope they win.
Awesome. Well, and for the audience too, if you read that bill, where we're at in the process for that lawsuit is, at this stage, the Attorney General's office is going to go out and they're going to find a law firm to conduct this lawsuit. And once they have that law firm picked, then they're supposed to, according to this bill, give regular updates to the National Council and the Chief's office on where the status of that lawsuit is as things develop. And we'll have those updates for you here. My question for you now, Mr. Parks, is, because I know we're probably going to have citizens and have had citizens since we ran the update on Ms. Stroble's case, ask us, what do I do? What can I do? In light of this federal lawsuit that the tribe is going to be conducting, is this a time where the citizens need to go out and get a lawyer and try to challenge their income tax, or should they wait and see how this federal lawsuit plays out? What do you think about that?
My recommendation is that individual members of the Mvskoke Creek Nation go ahead and file amended income tax returns for the past 3 years. The law is clear, you can claim it for 3 years if they meet these 3 requirements. And also on future tax returns, when everyone files by the 15th of each year, they should go ahead and claim it's referred to as the exemption or the exclusion. The instructions are with the tax returns. There's a section on the instructions, but they should go ahead and claim this on any current or future filings, as well as file amended returns for the past 3 years, which would be 2021, 2020, and 2019 if they haven't done so already. And then they have to submit with the returns a copy of their membership card, a copy of the deed or lease on their residence, and then also their W-2 statement that shows who they were employed by, or even better, a letter from their employer verifying their employment with an address within the reservation of the Mvskoke Creek Nation. they should also mail that in. Now then, if they're denied by the Oklahoma Tax Commission, they need to follow any instructions in the letter, especially the instruction about filing a protest letter within 60 days. You don't want to miss that deadline.
Okay.
So that's the best advice I can give. And people can do this on their own, or they can have their tax preparer, CPA, or their own attorney do it. And I would be happy to answer questions from anyone if they need to contact me in the future.
Okay, great. Awesome. So, and for the audience too, if you Google Mike Parks, his law firm comes up, and you can go right to his website. So to get in touch with him, and I'll go ahead and put a link to his website in the description of this video. I don't think we have one in there right now, but I'll go ahead and put that in there, and that has all of his contact information in there. I guess we should kind of also hone down on who this applies to exactly. You know, you mentioned the qualifications that I believe it is that you have to be a member of a federally recognized tribe. You have to be working in the reservation and deriving income from sources on the reservation. Is that basically it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Those are the three requirements. And the problem in the past has been that the Oklahoma Tax Commission, they won't grant this exclusion if someone works for a company other than the tribe that they're a member of. Mm-hmm. Or if they don't live on restricted or trust land. And so the vast majority of citizens of the Mvskoke Creek Nation do not live on restricted or trust land, and probably a large number don't work for the tribe. Mm-hmm. But they work for an employer that's within the reservation, which I define to be the traditional jurisdictional territorial limits of the Mvskoke Creek Nation. I believe it's the 11 counties.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, you have to meet those three requirements, or you have to pay state income tax. And one other thing I'd like to say about the legislation and the federal lawsuit that's going to be filed, that case, once it's decided, and hopefully it will be decided in favor of the nation, then that will benefit all citizens, whether or not they filed an individual tax protest. Mm-hmm. The advice I gave earlier, it's not to solicit any business for myself. I'm just trying to give good, sound advice to the members of the Mvskoke Creek Nation. And I think it's a good idea to go at it both ways, to go at it individually and then let the tribe pursue the federal case too.
Yeah. And I, if we're just chatting, because I agree with you 100% that this is something that, citizens need to look into for sure. My question about the federal lawsuit would be this is, so would you think that this is going to be in the format of a class action type lawsuit?
I am not qualified to answer that question.
Okay.
I wish that I could, but
well, the reason
I'm just not an expert with that type of federal legislation.
Right.
I'm unable to answer that particular question.
Gotcha. Because to me, that's one of my questions when I saw the bill go through is I think that the bill is great and it's nice because it is a cost for a citizen to fight this all the way through the tax commission. And if the tax commission decides that they're going to make a case out of every single instance, right, that can be a legal cost for the individual citizen. So it's good to see the nation jumping into there. On the other hand, though, it's also, if it's a situation where there is a judgment awarded, right, from my perspective, just as a layman, normally in those situations, the tribe has had judgments in the past where the judgment is split up amongst the citizens so all of the citizens get the same amount, right? And in this situation, if you have your income tax, because citizens are going to have different amounts of income within the state, when you file with the state tax commission, it's going to be a different amount for each citizen based on what they filed on their taxes, right? So that's my question is, would a federal lawsuit like this kind of, I don't know what the word would be, like if there was a decision in it, preempt any citizen's ability to claim for a higher amount of taxes than what they would get in a settlement? Does that make sense?
Yes, that's a very good question, and that will have to be worked out in the federal case. I will say this, and how this case is handled will be up to the attorneys that the nation hires.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say this. I know enough about federal procedure to offer this opinion.
Okay.
It may be that the Mvskoke Creek Nation seeks a declaratory judgment against the commissioners of the Oklahoma Tax Commission, making a legal determination that if someone proves they're a member of the Creek Nation, number one, number two, they prove that their income was earned within the reservation or jurisdiction of the Creek Nation, and then number three, that they live within the Indian Country reservation or jurisdiction of the Mvskoke Creek Nation, then they are entitled to the exemption or the exclusion. And so with that, if that's the way the attorneys in the nation decide to go to seek declaratory relief, then once they got that judgment, the amount of the individual award would be determined in the amended returns or the returns filed by each individual citizen.
I see.
So what I'm saying is, it is possible the federal court would not determine the amount that's due and owing, but rather would judicially determine and clarify the criteria that would have to be met.
I see. I understand now. That makes more sense, too, that they would do it that way.
I see that as a possibility, but once again, that will be up to the attorneys the nation hires.
Yeah, and it seems like a declaratory judgment would also cut down the amount of time that could be in the court without having to quibble about amounts for a judgment and et cetera, if the nation is just asking for that. But we'll have to see what actually happens. But thanks for that information.
Sure.
Amazingly, I was expecting there to be a whole bunch of questions in the chat today because this has been such a big issue, but I don't see any questions right now. I know you informed us of what the next steps are. The representation for Mrs. Stroble, how long do you think this case is going to go on before she actually sees the money come back to her?
Yes. No, I understand. I would say that we should receive a final decision by the commissioners sometime this summer. And then if an appeal is filed to the Oklahoma Supreme Court after that, we should have a decision in another couple of years. And so I'd say there's a very good chance her case will be the first case that's decided among individuals. And it should be decided, I would say, sometime in 2024. These are estimates. Mm-hmm. But then there's always the possibility because this does involve federal law and federal treaties, there's always the possibility once the Oklahoma Supreme Court makes a decision, there could be an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now let me say one other thing, too. Okay. I have tried 7 or 8 cases like this year. Hers is the only case I've gotten a decision in. Some of the cases I've tried, they are for members of the Creek Nation who work for private companies in South Tulsa that are within the reservation of the Creek Nation. And they're not employees of the tribe like Ms. Stroble. So I'm really looking forward to getting those decisions to see how the judge is going to rule in those cases, because I think we should win those cases too, but that remains to be seen. So that's another interesting development that will be on the horizon.
Yeah, and keep us updated on that too, sir. You know, we would love to have you back on for any updates in any of the other cases. We have had, and just along the lines of what you were just speaking about, a question pop up here. I'm going to read it verbatim. Are there similar exemptions for company revenue if the company is fully owned by a member of the nation, or would income have to be individually taken?
This particular Indian income tax exclusion or exemption that is described in the instructions, it's only for individuals. It's not for companies, corporations, business entities, partnerships, LLCs, even if they are entirely owned by citizens of a particular federally recognized tribe. Unfortunately, it's not going to benefit the corporation because corporations, they have separate tax laws that govern them compared to individuals.
Yeah, and you would think also because they have to be incorporated with the state anyway, that would affect that. So, well, thanks so much for the information. I want to mention to the chat, if you guys are watching this, pop your questions in. We've only got maybe 2 or 3 more minutes or maybe 5 minutes left on the program. So if you have a question, go ahead and pop it in there. Mr. Parks, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm really glad that you agreed to do the interview because this is an issue that I've had a lot of questions from citizens myself on. And it's also, you know, a lot of times, you know, understandably so, lawyers are kind of like, hey, I can't give legal advice and all of that type of stuff. So, and you haven't really given any legal advice today, but I do encourage any citizens out there that if you're going to those first steps that Mr. Parks outlined about filing amended returns and all of, and then when you get your letter from the state about the next steps, following those within the 60-day deadline or 30-day deadline,
60 days.
60 days. Those don't require a lawyer to do, and those are forms that you can get. When you file for the exemption, if you're doing your new taxes, is that something that you can file through e-file? Would you know that to submit all of the paperwork with that, or is this something that you'd need to mail it into the tax commission?
And by the way, I believe you need to mail it in. I don't think you can submit documents other than the return through e-file.
Okay.
But the documents I mentioned earlier to submit, the members should submit those with either amended returns or original returns.
Okay.
And the other thing I'd like to say is that I have your email address, and I'll be happy to email you decisions on these other cases,
right,
information about those, so you can share those with your audience.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, sir, for being on the program, and I think we've covered all the facets of this particular issue. I don't see any more questions popping up in the chat, so we're gonna wrap up for today, and I want to let the audience know that we have another live wire on. I'm scheduling it right now tentatively for Thursday the 13th. It's with Laura Clark. She is the organizer of an art exhibition that's called Chiefs, Clans, and Kin, and it's an art exhibition that highlights the connections that citizens who also have Celtic ancestry, right? So if they have Irish or Scottish ancestry, how the symbols of those two cultures kind of overlap. So it's going to be a really interesting interview, and that's an exhibition that's going to be running for a couple of months here in Oklahoma before it goes elsewhere. So if you're interested in that, tune in on Thursday for that live wire, and you could pop in and ask any questions there. And with that being said, thank you so much, Mr. Parks, and we'll see you again. Chihichot, Lise.
Have a good evening, Jared.